And of course, I'm muted. All right. You guys must have been wondering why I was talking to myself there for a little bit. Unfortunately, my mic got muted. All right. So now that the sound is working, and now that I am I am able to speak, let's officially start this broadcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Molehill Mountain, episode 57. Yes, that is one more than last week's episode, which was 56. And my name is E. Zachary Knight, and I will be your host. Andrew Eisen is unavailable today. He is still on vacation. He should be back next week. So if you guys have missed him, like I have, he will be here. All right. And so, um, I guess just get started. This week I haven't been playing too many games. I've been playing Pokemon Go. Haven't done a whole lot in that one this week. I'm really waiting for something new to come up. I've got one of the great things at my job is that there's a GPS drift when I'm at my desk. And so I can just turn on Pokemon Go and let it drift. And while it's doing that, I'm hatching eggs and I'm getting buddy candy. And so I've been able to get a bunch of the Pokemon that I've been missing from my Pokédex by getting buddy candy and evolving them that way. And now I'm on my very last Pokemon. Well, no, I guess my second to last one. But I'm working on Mareep to get my Flaffy and Ampharil, I think is what it's called. And I need a whole lot of candies for that. Even getting 3, if I'm lucky, 4 candies a day, it's going to take me over a month just off the GPS drift. So that'll be a while. The only other Pokemon that I'm missing are ones that, so I need Unknown, which I have to find and catch, which is nearly impossible. Miltank, which can hatch from 10K eggs, but I've never hatched one, and I've never seen one in the wild. Um, and then Hitmonchan, and that one I can get from Tyrogues if I can hatch them. And I've got a Tyrogue, but I only have one candy because I evolved one already and got my Hitmontop. So, but the one that I have is not a guaranteed Hitmonchan, and so that's gonna bug the crap out of me. I'm gonna have to find or hatch another Tyrogue before and hatch them, and hopefully get a Tyrogue that will be a guaranteed Hitmonchan when it evolves. Because until then, no, I'm stuck without Hitmonchan. I would love to find one and catch him, but I've never seen one of those in the wild. I've never seen a Hitmonlee in the wild. I've never seen a Hitmontop in the wild. There's a lot of Pokemon that people find in the wild all the time, but I've never seen. So there's that. And then the only other game that I've played extensively this week is Magikarp Jump. I'm still playing that one. I am on the 8th league, the Ultra League, which is the last league in the game as far as I'm aware. It's the last one in the league listings. So what comes after that, I don't know. The only thing that I can think of that comes after that is more Magikarp patterns, because there's still 2 tiers of Magikarp patterns that are locked away that I can't get access to. So happens after I beat the Ultra League. Based on what I've read online, the Ultra League is going to take me like 1.5 billion or 1.25 billion jump power or experience, if you want to call it that. And so that's going to be a long, long time because my Magikarps are capping out at I forget. I don't know, like 100,000 jump power or something at the moment. So I'm gonna have to level up quite a bit to get those. But what happens after this, after the Ultra League, just to see what the end game is. And so the only other game that I've played is Aquaria. I'm still trying to beat that. I took a break for like a week or so just because I was bored, lazy, I guess, and so I have been playing that the last couple of days. I beat the last optional boss in the game, the mantis shrimp. Um, wasn't as difficult as I was thinking he was, because I tried beating him before and I was having a little bit trouble getting the pattern down. But this time I beat him, didn't have any trouble. He did kill me the first time, but that was because I was being stupid and didn't play my cards right. But I beat him the second time, which was good. And so now I'm at the final boss, and I am going to try to beat him and kill him. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah. As for non-gaming stuff, I'm trying to get my son to read Jurassic Park. My son is 13 now, and I was around his age when I first read Jurassic Park. I watched Jurassic Park, the original movie, in theaters when it first came out, and I loved the movie. The movie was awesome, and and it's still great today. It's still a great film, even though it doesn't stay true to the books. It's still the best Michael Crichton movie, uh, or book to movie adaptation that we've had. None of his other movies have lived up to the original Jurassic Park, which is very sad because he's got some great books, some great stories, and so I figured my son, we've been watching some of the Jurassic Park movies. We watched the first one, the second one, and Jurassic World. He hasn't seen Jurassic Park 3 yet, which I'm not too worried about because that one is a terrible movie, but he wants to see it, and I want to let him watch it just for completionist's sake. But we've told him that he's not allowed to watch it until he reads Jurassic Park completely. So we'll see how that goes. I really hope that he likes the book because I did. It's got some great dinosaur on human violence and some human on dinosaur violence, but it's mostly dinosaurs killing people. So that's one of the fun things about the book. I just loved everything about that, and and it got me started reading all the other Michael Crichton books, and so the only books of Michael Crichton's that I haven't read are the ones that he wrote under the pseudonym. I believe it was John Lang. I would like to read those. Those are more, from what I understand, are murder mystery style books, which I can understand why he published those under a pseudonym. And then the other books are the two that were published. Well, there's three that were published posthumously. I read Pirate Latitude, and then there was the one that was released where it was published based on some notes of his, like somebody else came and wrote it and they published it based on his notes. I think that one was Micro. And then there was a new one that just came out that apparently was a full manuscript that they found, and they published that one. And I'm trying to remember what the name of that book is. Let me look that up and see what Michael Crichton books. Oh, goodness. Oh, Dinosaur Teeth. That one's more of a, yeah, that one actually sounds interesting, and I really want to read it. I'm kind of, I kind of don't care that it was written or published posthumously and that it might not have actually been fully written by Michael Crichton, but it does sound very interesting, and it's a story in the vein of the Great Train Robbery that Michael Crichton wrote, where it's kind of a historical retelling of of a, a real event, and this one's all about the dinosaur digs. And so, yeah, it looks great. It sounds very intriguing. Sounds like something I would really enjoy. And so I haven't gotten around to actually checking that one out and reading it, but I definitely want to. I have more of an interest in reading that one than I do with Micro, which sounds good too. Sounds like it might be a good Michael Crichton book, but I just haven't really had an interest in picking that one up because it wasn't fully written by Michael Crichton. But other books that I want to read, I got tons of them. I want to read more of John Scalzi's work and Cory Doctorow. Cory Doctorow has a sequel to Little Brother, which I want to read, and then John Scalzi has the Old Man War series, and I read the first one, and I really want to read the rest of them. So it's just a matter of tracking those down because the libraries around here don't carry either one of them. I actually went to the library last week, and I checked out their I didn't find any Cory Doctorow, didn't find any John Scalzi, and then the Michael Crichton books, they only had a handful of them, and they didn't have Dragon Teeth. They had Micro, I remember that, but they didn't have Dragon Teeth. And then the other author I was looking for, Jim Butcher, he writes the Dresden File books, and I really enjoy those. And I was hoping to be able to check out a copy of Side Jobs, his book of short stories, and I want to read those because it's just one of those things that I haven't actually gotten around to reading. I've read all the other Dresden File books except for that one, and I really love the Dresden Files books, and the next book is not coming soon enough. But yeah, that's kind of been my week. I tried to do a little bit of game development work and just did not have enough time to really sit down and do it. And I've still got a backlog of sites to back up and transfer over to my new hosting, and I got to do that this month because I don't want to pay for another month of hosting at DreamHost. So I've got to take care of that and get all of that taken care of. And also, I've got stuff I want to write too, and some of the stuff I wanted to write, I'm actually going to talk about in this podcast, just because I didn't get the opportunity to write the stories that I wanted about them. Now, the first thing, so let's go ahead and get started on the topics because I don't have a lot to share about the week. So we'll go ahead and jump right into the first topic of the day. For those who are unawares, Disney now owns Lucasfilm, which means that Disney can now produce Star Wars and Star Wars movies and other stuff based on Star Wars. And one of the things that they're doing is an animated series. It's a series of short videos about the women in the Star Wars universe, and not like not going out into the expanded universe, but dealing specifically with what is now the Disney canon, the movies and the animated shows, Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. And then they haven't done any, as far as I know, they haven't done anything with the new canon books, but I'm not, I'm not sure if they're planning on doing anything like that. And I'm pulling up my Twitter notes. Is that so the Forces of Destiny, these are shorts, and they're meant to, as far as I'm aware, they're meant to introduce young girls to the Star Wars universe using the strong and powerful women leads in the films and in the TV shows. And so they star, so far they've had Rey, they've had Princess Leia, Ahsoka, Jyn Erso, um, trying to think, they had somebody else in there too, or that might have been it. Let me double check here real quick. Let's see. Rey, Leia, Ahsoka. There's Leia again. Leia or Ahsoka and Padme, Jyn Erso. Oh, Sabine. Yeah, they had Sabine from the Star Wars Rebels show, along with Princess Leia, because it takes place just shortly before New Hope and before Rogue One, and so they haven't introduced everyone. They don't have Hera in there from Rebels, and but those are some of the main characters, or most of the main women characters in the canon, in the movies and the shows. I've enjoyed them. The episodes are only like 3 to 4 minutes long. They've made some interesting choices in location and what they go into. Specifically with Rey, Disney is still pretty tight-lipped on what Rey has done outside the movies, and before the Last Jedi, they don't want to much of Rey's backstory, because if you remember in The Force Awakens, once we meet Rey, it's pretty much a nonstop journey to her confrontation with Kylo Ren, and then off to Luke Skywalker. So there really isn't a lot to work with in there. And so the 2 episodes that they published, or that they produced and published, starring Rey, take place in like the 8-hour period between when she meets BB-8 on when she meets Finn. And so there's this 8-hour period, and so these 2 episodes take place in that 8-hour period. It's kind of an interesting choice, but there really isn't a lot to work with. They don't want to spoil anything that happens after meeting Luke Skywalker and before the Force, or the Last Jedi. And so they're keeping that end off, and they don't want to spoil anything before, because her backstory is still a big secret. So while those are fun, they don't really expand on who she is as a character, or what she has to say or do. But then they have 2 that are starring Princess Leia, and the first one takes place on Endor, at the battle, or on Endor before the battle with the Ewoks and everything. And then the other one that stars Princess Leia takes place on Hoth, where Leia and Chewbacca and R2-D2 actually have an encounter with a Wampa ice creature. Very interesting there too, because nobody has had based on the actual canon, the movies and everything, nobody has actually seen a Wampa. There was a cut scene that was never fully produced. From what I understand, where there was actually going to be some kind of encounter with a Wampa ice creature, or a handful of them as they're building the base, or something like that, but that never got produced. So this one takes place then. And then there's 2 that star Ahsoka, and one of them has co-stars Padme, where one of them is Ahsoka trying to get to some kind of meeting with Anakin and Yoda, and she ends up getting sidetracked because there's this rampaging robot that she has to stop. And then the other one is Padme is preparing for a ambassador's dinner, and Ahsoka realizes that something is wrong, and they find out that one of Padme's assistants her little, the people that follow her around is actually an imposter, and so they've got to stop. And she's one of those face changing or shape shifting aliens, like they had in Clone Wars, one of the bounty hunters at the beginning of that, and so cool. And then Jyn Erso's episode, she just basically is causing trouble with the stormtroopers whatever place she is, and the stormtroopers are being bullies to this kid and her cat, and so Jyn Erso takes out the stormtroopers and lets the kid run off with her cat. And then the final one is where Princess Leia is trying to get some information to Sabine and the other rebels, but she can't blow her cover, and so Sabine does a fake kidnapping, and they end up running into IG-88, the bounty hunter robot, which is kind of an interesting thing too, because IG-88 is, if you've ever read the short, there was a couple of short story books based on characters at, there was one that was characters from the Katina, the Mos Eisley Katina, one from Jabba's palace, and then the bounty hunters in that that Darth Vader had hired in Empire Strikes Back, and they all tell the stories of, this tells the story of all the bounty hunters that were there. And IG-88 had this really messed up backstory and adventure and stuff, and explains why his head was at Cloud City and a few other things. A few other, like, if you're very eagle-eyed, you can spot him in one or two of the other movies. But yeah, so it was it's just kind of interesting to see IG-88 used because he was only ever officially in Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, but I had some thoughts about these. As much as I enjoyed them, and I watched them all, and I understand that they're aimed at little kids, little girls specifically, and there's actually a toy line very similar to DC's Superhero Girls toy line that Disney is trying to sell. They're trying to capitalize on what I call the Disney Star Wars princess aspect of the thing. But my problem lies in the fact that nobody dies. Nobody kills anybody. And again, this is for little kids, but to me, it seems odd that in situations where these characters, like if these characters are in the exact same situation in one of the movies, stormtroopers would have died. But since it's in a cartoon for little kids and supposedly canon, they're not killing anybody. Case in point, when Princess Leia in the episode where she's on Endor, okay, this is after she meets Wicket, the little Ewok played by Warwick Davis, great actor. I love him. So Wicket and Princess Leia are going off to go to the Ewok village, and they come up upon a scene where some stormtroopers are threatening a couple of other Ewoks, and these other Ewoks are just kind of, cowering, and they're afraid for their lives. Why the stormtroopers haven't just killed them anyways? They're sitting there, talking about how this place is infested, and they should have come through and killed off all the Ewoks when they first arrived. And so Wicket, he disappears, and he's off trying to say, he's off climbing trees in order to get a vantage point to save his friends from the stormtroopers. And in this all commotion, he's throwing, Wicket's throwing rocks and everything, and then he eventually gets the two stormtroopers lassoed, and he's trying to pull them up from, pulling them up on the tree, and but he doesn't have enough body weight to lift two full stormtroopers, and so it and so Princess Leia, she comes out, and she starts, she gets involved in the fight, and she jumps up and grabs Wicket and pulls him down, and so their combined weight were enough to counterbalance the stormtroopers, and they go flying up and bonk their head on a tree and get knocked unconscious. And all this time, Princess Leia has a blaster in her hand, or on her side, or wherever. She's got a blaster with her, but she never uses it. Here she is. They're on a covert mission to infiltrate the shield base in order to shut down the shield generator so that their friends can successfully run a strike on the Death Star 2. And she leaves two stormtroopers alive to alert the rest of the Empire. And this makes no sense to me, even in the context of this video being for little kids. Maybe she destroyed their comm links or whatever and left them to the indoor equivalent of the wolves. But I don't, you never see that, and the actual action you see doesn't lead to you to connect this to the movie Princess Leia, who was a really awesome fighter. She killed plenty of stormtroopers, and so yeah. The other one that really stood out too was the one starring Jyn Erso. And with this one, again, it's a situation where in the movies Jyn Erso kills stormtroopers. And Jyn Erso in this one, she leads the stormtroopers away, and in order to get them away from the little kid that they were terrorizing, and she ends up, after this big long chase scene, ends up dropping them down into the sewers. She destroys she gets them to stand on a sewer grate, and shoots it, and they fall like 8 feet to the ground, and they're just all squirming on there, like that. It's like, seriously, she would have killed them if this were the movie. If this were Rogue One, she would have killed them. And so, the other ones are more in situations where there isn't something where they would have killed. The episodes with Rey, she doesn't come across to me as someone who would have caused too much trouble for herself on Jakku, because she wants to make a living, and so she doesn't want everybody out to get her. And so there's one episode where she's fighting a couple of other junk dealers who are trying to steal BB-8 from her. And of course, I can understand her not wanting to kill them, because they're just, they're pretty much just like she is. They're scavengers. They go out and they find parts that are usable and can be either repaired and sold, or just sold outright. And so I can understand why she wouldn't want to kill them. And so that doesn't bother me. And then the one with Amidala Padme Amidala and Ahsoka, where they're fighting the shape-shifting spy imposter. I could understand, I guess, why they would want to take the spy alive. so that they could get information or whatever. And so it's not really a situation where they probably wouldn't have killed them. The episode with um, with Sabine from Star Wars Rebels, that one's another one where I could see it going either way, where Sabine that doesn't actually kill any of the stormtroopers. IG-88 doesn't kill anybody, which is kind of out of character for him, or at least we don't see anybody kill him kill anybody. But again, I could see Sabine killing some of the stormtroopers if she couldn't help it, and it certainly seemed like she was in a couple of situations where yeah, that's something she would have done. And so my thing is, I'm not condoning killing. I'm not saying that these characters should just go in guns a blazing, but what I'm saying is that these episodes are percent accurate representations of these characters. Where if this was a little girl's first introduction to these characters and then they go and watch the movies, what is Disney's idea of how they would transition between them, between this episode, between these cartoon episodes? So how would a kid who just watched Princess Leia in the Forest of Endor episode and then goes and watches Return of the Jedi, where she shoots stormtroopers with a blaster, with the speeder bikes, knocks stormtroopers into trees and they explode, and all of this. It's like, what is the kid how's the kid supposed to react to that after watching these shows? And I have no clue. I don't know what Disney's end goal here is, other than to sell some princess dolls, Star Wars princess dolls. So that in itself is okay. I don't care. They're a business, and they have these women characters. They're great characters. I love them. I want to see more of them. And sadly, Carrie Fisher is no longer with us. So episode 9 or episode 8, yeah, episode 8 is going to be our last time out with her as Princess Leia. So getting to see more Princess Leia in Rebels, Star Wars Rebels, and these shows is great. Ahsoka is a character that people love. They loved her in Clone Wars. They loved her in Rebels, and so they want to see more of her. And so these are great, and I love them. And I hope that they produce more of these that take place between Clone Wars and Rebels, because that is an excellent segment of time of her life as she finds herself after she left the Jedi Order, and she becomes a rebel fighting the Empire. There's a great series of events that can be mined for books, comics, an actual movie starring her. That would be great, and I would love it, and everything. And sadly, Jen Erso, it was kind of a one-shot deal, but there might be some interesting stories to tell of her life before she got wrapped up in the Rebels. And so I think we could explore a little bit more of her life between losing her father and getting recruited by the Rebels. So, that's I think that's enough about that. Again, I love them. I love the shorts. I just have a hard time understanding what Disney's end goal is. All right. So next up, we got net neutrality. This week there was a day without net neutrality online protest thing. A lot of businesses, a lot of online businesses like Google and Netflix and a bunch of other people did an event similar to the SOPA blackout day. If any of you guys remember that, a lot of websites went black to protest SOPA, which the Stop Online Piracy Act, and it was a very successful one. It got a lot of people were made aware of what SOPA was, and Congress backed down from it, and which was great, and it was excellent event. And so they did something similar this week with net neutrality. And for those who are unaware, net neutrality is the concept that all information is equal, where if it doesn't matter what you want to do on the internet, your ISP should have no hand in blocking, slowing, throttling, or whatever of what you're doing. Outside of a general, you've got 15 megabits per second download speed. That's not net neutrality. Net neutrality is you've got megabits per second download speed for everything except for Netflix. Netflix gets 10 megabits per second download speeds. That is a violation of net neutrality. And so this was something that Comcast was caught doing with BitTorrent, where they were blocking BitTorrent traffic. They just said, "Oh, that's a peer-to-peer BitTorrent signal. We're going to block that, and you can't do it." Yeah, and there's been similar fights with Netflix. AT&T and T-Mobile and Verizon have flirted with what's called zero rating, where there's a handful of apps and services that don't count towards data caps and don't get throttled, while everything else is subject to data caps and throttling. And so the concept of net neutrality is that all information should be equal on the internet, and that was something that the FCC under the Obama administration had made moves towards making sure would happen, would stay. And so the fight now is because the Trump administration appointed a JIT Pi. I probably butchered the name, but he had been on the FCC because there's a requirement for the board of the FCC that a certain number have to be Republican and a certain number have to be Democrat. So the president can't just pack the board with just one. No, excuse me, with just one party. And so a JIT Pi had been on the board for several years now, and now he's the head of the FCC. And one of the first things he does is get rid of net neutrality, and that's what people were protesting this week. And I just wanted to, Andrew and I have talked about net neutrality before on this podcast, and back when it was the Super Podcast Action Committee. But net neutrality is a very important thing, and it's something that that could potentially impact us all. Everybody that's watching this is watching it on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio, you downloaded it through iTunes or on another service in order to listen to it on your phone, or you may be streaming it. You never know what you're doing, but the idea of net neutrality is that this podcast should be able to reach you without any trouble whatsoever. You should be able to watch or listen to this podcast at the speed that you're paying for. And a lot of opponents of net neutrality make the claim that this prevents ISPs from being able to manage content and and their networks and all that, and this prevents them from expanding, from innovating. And that's a load of BS. Seriously. These guys have had years, decades to prepare for the internet as it is today. And instead of preparing for the internet the way people use it, they have spent their time lobbying state and federal governments to create a landscape of laws that protect them from competition through laws that make the barrier of entry for upstart ISPs nearly impossible to circumnavigate. Google made the attempt to start their gigabit internet services around the U.S., and they've had some successes. Very good reception from those cities that have been able to actually get it. But the problem is that Google had to give up because they couldn't get through, or they couldn't get the internet set up in every place they wanted to because of these regulations. And and other cities have tried to create municipal fiber networks where the city owns the network. Some of the cities have tried to actually run the ISP, which I think is a bad idea. Other cities have actually just tried to do a setup where they create and maintain the pipes, the network cables, and then other internet services are able to come in, connect to the townsfolk to the internet, greater internet, and which is the better idea. I think that's probably the best solution we could come up with, under the current landscape. But broadband companies have been lobbying state governments to make it illegal for cities to do either of those options, to either run an ISP or create their own network and lease it out. And going along with that, and that drives me nuts. And so this lack of competition that we have in the internet service provider, or internet service providers, is the reason why we're having the net neutrality argument to begin with. If we had actual competition, where if you didn't like the packet sniffing and throttling that your current internet service provider was doing, you could just say, sorry, goodbye, I'm going with option B, or I'm going with option C, or option D, or option E. We don't have that. At best, you have option A or option B, and because of collusion between the two, they both do these bad things. Just an anecdotal thing. At my last house, we tried going with Cox, but Cox kept screwing with my VPN connection to work. I'd be able to connect, but then Cox would cut me off after like 20 minutes. And they kept doing that over and over and over again. And it got to a point where, I wasn't able to do my job. And so, I had to go and switch to AT&T. Now, while AT&T allowed me to VPN into work, it was at a slower speed with a lower data cap than what Cox had. So I was screwed either way. And if I had 3 or 4 or 5 ISPs to choose from, I doubt any of those companies would be doing what they were doing. And that's the problem. And so while net neutrality is a very important fight to have, we need to get neutrality in. The reason we have to get it in is because of this lack of competition. I don't think if we had actual competition in the internet scene, I don't think we would be having the argument, having this debate about net neutrality like we are today. The debate would be between, hey, Cox, stop throttling my VPN connection, or I'm going to go to this company. And Cox would say, crap, people are leaving us because we're blocking or throttling VPN connections. Let's stop doing that so customers would come back to us. It's the same thing with cable and satellite, where if you want television, that if you want premium channels and stuff, you either got to get your cable connection or you got to get a satellite. And because it's just the two, they can both charge outrageous rates and bundle channels that you don't want. But if we had a large, if we had a number of cable providers, we could probably get things like a la carte television, something that people want, but they can't get because they're forced to bundle channels that they don't want. And so yeah, I think net neutrality is a very important thing. And even though we're fighting for that specifically, we also need to be fighting for real competition in the broadband scene. And that is how we're going to make the biggest impact on preserving net neutrality. And unfortunately, the Trump regime and the Republican-controlled Congress have no interest in preserving net neutrality. They would rather sell the internet. They would rather sell legislation that's in favor of cable companies rather than do what's right for us as people, as internet users. So there's that. And so I think we'll move on here to the final topic I had that I wanted to talk about. And this was, I wrote Indiegogo on here. Sorry, it's itch.io I wanted to talk about. Goodness, I don't know why I was thinking Indiegogo. So if you might be aware, but this week Indiegogo had a bit of an issue. And the problem, what Indiegogo, or Indigo, what itch.io, I'm talking about itch.io, not Indiegogo, itch.io. I got to get that into my own brain. I got to get that ingrained here. Itch.io. So what itch.io is it's a service for game developers to be able to create a store page for their indie game, and itch.io handles the hosting of the game files, and the interface to allow customers to come in, buy the game, and download it. It's not really a competitor to Steam because they don't have any kind of background services or interoperability or anything like that like Steam does. They don't do achievements, they don't do friends lists, all that kind of stuff. It's just there for developers to have a place to sell their game through. And I use it to host one of my games, and then a game jam thing that I did that isn't complete, probably never will be. But itch.io takes a very hands-off approach to selling games, to allowing developers to do it. There's no verification process for the developer who signs up. They just sign up, upload the files they want, set the price, and they're good to go. And unfortunately, somebody took advantage of that. And this week, there was a problem where somebody had been taking files off of, like they would download the files from Steam for certain high-profile indie games, and then they would go and create an account on itch.io and as if they were that game's developer and upload them, and then they would uh, post them at a steep discount from what they were on Steam. So if the game was $20, they would list it at $5 or $2.50 or something like that. And so people, so they did that, and then and they did that because they know that sale trackers, like there's companies out there or services out there that you can subscribe to and say, I'm looking for XX, X game, or this list of games, and this service scrapes itch.io, it scrapes the Humble Bundle, Good Old Games, Steam, and then looks at the prices, and then if there's a good discount, it sends a notice out to everybody that's subscribed that, hey, X game is on sale for this amount. And so these people who took advantage of itch.io's loose upload requirements, registration requirements, they took advantage of this by taking high-profile indie games, listing them on itch.io at a steep discount, and then waiting for these services to send a ton of customers over to buy these pirated games. And then the money went, and using an option that itch.io has, that money went straight into their PayPal accounts. Nothing, there was basically nothing to slow the process out. So a lot of people, they're not any estimates that I found, but a lot of people were swindled and ended up buying incomplete games, pirated games, and whatever from this scammy guy. And while this sucks, while this is a terrible thing to happen, itch.io handled it very well. The first thing they did was they shut off the payment process that allows the money to go straight to the developer. Now itch.io, they have decided they're just going to go into the escrow type system where you get a monthly payment instead of the money right away. They hold on to the money until I think it's the 5th of the month, and then they send it off to you. So however much you make during that month, you get on that day, and then the same month after month, which for a lot of developers, that's kind of how things are, so it's not that big of a deal. But it does put a wrinkle into this. So now they have the ability to stop the money going to the scammers before it happens, and they're able to refund the money, because right now there's no way for them to get the money back, so they're having to pay refunds out of their own pocket, which is something that is also good. They're giving customers refunds. They're saying, okay, you bought the game from this scummy guy, and we're sending you a refund. They are doing this without having to be prompted. You don't have to contact them. They just instantly, because they know exactly who bought the money or who bought the games, and so they're able to provide that refund really quickly. And then they also shut down that scammer from using itch.io. And so I was just very impressed with how they handled things. This was something that, you see companies like Target or somebody like that, they will get, somebody will hack into their system and get a bunch of credit card data, and then you don't know about it for months. And so it's great when a service like this makes these corrections and fixes the problem. They publicly apologized. They publicly recognized the flaws in their own system. They made a plan to fix it, and they're doing that, and that's commendable to me. I think they deserve a lot of thanks for that. And So that's the podcast for today. Um, thank you all for listening. I'll close up here. My name is Zachary Knight. You can follow me on Twitter at EZKnight. You can follow my game development work at DK_gaming on Twitter. And that's divineknightgaming.com. If you're interested in the Oklahoma game development scene, check out OK Game Devs on Twitter and okgamedev.com. And finally, this has been Molehill Mountain. Andrew will be back next week, and so we'll have a great podcast for you then. And you can check out the archive of this podcast over at randomtower.com. And so check all that out, and I will talk to you all next week. Thank you and goodbye.